So this video, in a way, kind of serves like a bit of a recap in that you can really learn a lot about yourself and in turn learn a lot about your mental health by just taking a look at your surroundings and your environment. The thing with university, like I've said so many times before, the thing with university is that it gives you quite the structure from how long you're there to different grade levels to help you measure your success. There is a lot of structure. The thing with university, as I'm sure that so many who have gone to university have seen, the thing with university is that it is very different than the real world. And with that, the environment of university is very different than the environment of the real world. And with that, the type of environment that you get used to in university and within which you build up an identity and a sense of self and within which you experience success, that all translates differently to the real world. The person that you became during university doesn't always translate smoothly into the initial person that you become when you enter the real world. And again, because the environments can be quite different. What's actually pretty neat about entering new environments is being able to look back on your previous ones and really seeing them in a different way. Once you're moved, you can really understand things a lot better and see things in quite a different way than when you were actually experiencing them in that environment. When I looked back on my university experience, I learned a lot about how that environment contributed to what I was going through currently in terms of how I was coping with the transition of leaving school. I learned so many things, but for this video, I really want to focus on just 3. And all 3 are related in that they all resulted in me leaving university with unrealistic standards. The first thing to bring up is the experience that I had with the general McGill environment. McGill is a good university. On the one hand, it brings a lot of well-qualified and super smart and ambitious and hardworking people, which can serve as great motivation. And also, being a good school, McGill also brings in a lot of people from pretty well-off backgrounds. When I was at McGill, I was exposed to a lot of people who came from families where the parents were doctors and lawyers and professors, and I was exposed to a lot of people who went to good private schools and had the nice houses with the nice postal code. Like I said before, I'm from Toronto, and for those of you who are from there or who know a bit about it, I was exposed to guys who went to UCC and RSGC and girls who went to Havergal and BSS and people who live in Forest Hill and Rosedale. And I also met a lot of people from Vancouver, and some of them were from areas like West Van. And yeah, my university environment had a decent amount of people who came from decent backgrounds. Now, of course, it's not your fault where you were born, to whom you were born, and I'm not for a second saying that all these people have enjoyed a life that was filled with joy and ease and little to no struggle. I'm not saying that. What I am trying to say is that by being exposed to a decent amount of people from well-off backgrounds, it built, unknowingly to me at the time, it built this image and this standard for what not even just success looked like in terms of what to strive for, but what the norm looked like in terms of what to strive for. It just became a part of me that this was the type of life, the one that my friends' parents and peers' parents lived. This was the type of life that I would live. And again, for the record, I do plan on living that kind of life and giving my kids that kind of life. But again, what I'm trying to get at is that since this became my day-to-day standard measure for success and I got used to it, I expected to have it pretty much right away. Like very soon after leaving university. And in the real world, it doesn't work like that. How many of us have expected to just bust out onto the job scene and in no time at all be making six-figure salaries and having a secure pension and a big-ass investment portfolio that's flying off the ground? How many of us have, in some way, expected that? The reality is that it doesn't work like that. I'm not saying anything new in that success is a build-up and it takes time and peak salaries and positions and all that don't just come right away after university. My friends' parents and my peers' parents, you can bet that they worked hella hard over the years to be in the positions that they're in, to have been able to put their kids in the positions that they are in. The second thing that I want to talk about, which is nothing new if you've watched some of these videos, the second thing is the amount of social exposure that one can have during university. Like I've said before, I definitely pushed for as social of a university experience as possible. And so did many of my friends. Every day I was surrounded not only by friends, but by passers-by on campus and at the library that I probably at least knew by face or probably even by name because at some point or another I've stumbled across them in a tagged photo or something on Facebook. This became my standard. Friends and people of my age and in the same boat in life as me, always around. The reality, the real world, is not at all like that. Going to work, going to your job, is not like going to the library during finals. It's not a social event. You're not surrounded by all these friends and acquaintances. For many of us, after university, we're not coming home to a house full of roommates that are also some of our closest friends. Where most likely, at least in the early stages, coming home after a day of work to our parents' house. Very different social environments in university compared to post-university. The last discrepancy that I want to talk about is that in university, the formula for success is a lot more defined and structured than out in the real world. While all courses are different and different professors and TAs grade differently and all exams and papers are different, at the same time, in university, there are a lot of similarities. I personally, even into my second year, had started to really develop an approach to studying and doing readings and writing exams that was able to put me in, more often than not, a pretty good position to get a decent grade. I had this approach to achieving success, and what's more, I knew what success in university from an academic perspective looked like. In the real world, while there are still a lot of common themes and approaches and good habits for succeeding, the formula for success and success itself isn't often as clear-cut as in university. The example that I like to use is that in university, while the exam material might be hard and you might not fully feel like you know it all that well, what you do for sure know is what the actual exam material to study is. You do know that the exam will cover chapters 1 to 5. And so you have these parameters via the exam material within which to figure it out for the exam, the chapter 1 to the chapter 5 and in between. In the real world, the exam material, be it the job hunt, the settling down with someone, all that might also be hard. And again, you also might not fully feel like you know the material, but this time you also might not have all the exam material, so to speak. You might not have the chapters 1 to 5 to study from. You might not have those parameters. So yeah, the standards for, in terms of more concrete formulas for success in university, they don't always translate the same way into the real world. I feel like I butchered that exam material analogy. So yeah, to recap, by looking at your environment, in this case your university environment, you can learn a lot about yourself. And as I said in this specific video, you can learn a lot about where your standards and expectations for certain things come from. A big part of why I struggled with my post-university transition is because I had, again, without fully realizing it at the time, is because I had these inflated, somewhat skewed standards for what the real world looks like right after one graduates. Again, you should for sure be absolutely unapologetic in your drive and your quest to achieve these types of high standards for success. Just don't be surprised if it doesn't happen right away or with a potential bump or two down the road.